Hello, my name is Abrielle Negretti and I'm doing presentation 3 on assessment and teaching math equitably to all students. So I want to start off first with what is teaching for equity. The textbook explains that teaching for equity is much more than providing students with an equal opportunity to learn mathematics. It is not enough to require the same mathematic courses, give the same assignments, and use the identical assessment criteria. Instead, teaching for equity attempts to attain equal outcomes for all students by being sensitive to individual differences. So let's look at who needs access. Addressing the needs of all means providing access and opportunity for 1. Students who are identified as struggling or having a disability, 2. Students from different cultural backgrounds, 3. Students who are English language learners, 4. Students who are mathematically gifted, and 5. Students who are unmotivated or need to build resilience. Going into my first activity, I'm going to be focusing on peer mentoring. The textbook explains that students with special needs benefit from other students' modeling and support. The basic notion is that students learn best when they are placed in the role of an apprentice working with a more skilled peer or expert. So to focus on peer mentoring, I am going to be first starting with a fractions lesson that I would assess the students with a mini quiz and evaluating who is struggling and who is doing well. From here, I'll be creating a partner list with 1 student in each group of 2 who are understanding the lesson. Giving the pair this worksheet, I'll be asking if the 2 finish the worksheet and help each other as they go, one being a mentor, one being the peer who is learning from the other. Along with learning through peer mentoring, the Common Core standard that's going to be addressed here is understanding a fraction as the quantity formed by one part, and it's going over numbers and operations. My next activity is going to be activity 2, identifying and removing potential barriers. The textbook explains here that using friendly numbers instead of like numbers like $6.13, whole numbers like $6 are helpful in that they emphasize conceptual understanding rather than mixing computation and conceptual goals. Basically, by removing these barriers and having easier numbers to learn from, students are going to be more capable of focusing on the problem at hand instead of trying to focus on the small percentage like what the decimals are. So for this, I'll be giving them an assignment called How Much Did I Spend? Its intended grade level is 5th grade, and it is going to have a lot of numbers with small decimal places and small tens. And we're going to be starting by first asking that the students be given the worksheet and find the nearest dollar before solving the problem as usual. So this is going to be helping them with their rounding skills, and after that, after they round to the nearest dollar, I'm going to be asking that they work with the problems as usual and they find the answers after having rounded the numbers. So the Common Core standard here that I'm going to be working on is using place value understanding to round decimals to any place. The worksheet, since the worksheet is focusing on numbers and dollar signs, they are going to be rounding those decimals to the nearest dollar. My next activity is considering alternative assessment. So the textbook explains here that encouraging self-monitoring and self-assessment is something that is helpful because students with disabilities often are not good at self-reflection, and asking them to review an assignment or assessment to explain what was difficult and what they think they got right can help them to be more independent and take a greater responsibility for what they're learning. So with this, I'm first going to be starting off with the people bingo, and this is something that I think would be intended for a 6th grade level that they could do towards the beginning of the year to get to know each other as well. Students are going to be given first 15 minutes to go through the bingo worksheet and get help if they need on answering the questions. Instead of being asked to find the names and answers at the same time, I think that giving them the 15 minutes before is going to provide them more time to be able to ask questions if they need it and not feel as rushed to find names and also solve problems just in case there are students that work slower than others. After completing a worksheet like this, an activity like this that involves them answering questions and going around and being social, I'm going to ask that they do the self-evaluation form. And this is a form that can really be used on any activity that's being done in the classroom, but I'm just choosing this people bingo as an example. I think the self-evaluation form is helpful in that they're going to be able to reflect about what they learned and how it went. This also helps for them to determine if they're ready for harder activities in the future, if it was something that went well, or if it's something that might have been difficult for some learners that I can work on in the future with them. The Common Core standard that I will be covering in this one goes over the number systems, and it's interpreting and computing quotients of fractions. And that's just based off of the example of my people bingo that I was using, but really the self-evaluation sheet could have been used for any activity. My fourth activity is going to be creating gender-friendly classrooms. The textbook explains that providing opportunities for students to act out or model mathematical situations or concepts with movements and gestures is something that can be helpful for males because they show a stronger spatial ability, and involving boys and also girls, of course, in visual representations and physical actions can support mathematical learning. And this doesn't necessarily only apply to boys. For those that are more kinesthetic learners, we can see that this is going to be something that'll help them in understanding because they have a physical model rather than just word problems on a page. So for this, I think the intended grade level that I'm doing for this activity is going to be first grade. And I call the activity Apples in the Basket. I'm going to be giving them a simple math worksheet and addition problem, but instead of just giving them the worksheet and having them fill it out, I'm first going to be having students go to the front of the classroom, those that are volunteers and feel comfortable doing this, to show what is happening and represent with apples the first 3 problems in the worksheet. So for this, I would be providing apples and have them in a basket, and I would have students that feel comfortable come up and represent the addition problems with physical apples before sending them back to their desk to do the rest individually. Despite them doing it individually, I'll be providing paper apple cutouts. So simple little paper cutouts that they can have individually at their desk that each student will have capabilities of using, so that if they are physical learners, they can still look to their paper apples, instead of the physical ones that we use at the beginning of the class period. The Common Core standard that I'm covering here is operations and algebraic thinking. For first grade, this is just using addition and subtraction within 20 to solve word problems. And taking away from this, putting together and how the addition and subtraction works together. For the last activity, activity 5, I'm going to be focusing on incorporating students' identities. So the textbook explains here that seeing mathematics from various cultures provides opportunities for students to put faces on mathematical contributions. Both researchers and teachers have found that telling stories about their own lives or asking students to tell stories makes the mathematics relevant to students and can raise student achievement. So for this activity to focus more on students' identities, I'm going to be doing an activity called My Life in Pennies, and its intended grade level is 4th grade. For this activity, I'm going to be asking that each child collect 1 penny from each year they were alive. So if they're 8 at the time, collecting like a 2020, 2019, 2018, collecting each penny from each year that they were alive and providing a timeline of important things that happened each year of that penny. So from here, they can go home and work with their families on an activity like looking at when they were born, their birthdays, first steps, accidents, vacations, pets, births of siblings, and so on, so that they can provide more individualized context for the mathematical problems that are going to be coming later on. Because after they come back to the classroom with these timelines finished, I'm going to be asking that they find how many years are in between certain events, or calculating their age when certain things happen. This will be more individual in that I'll have to see what's on their timeline to begin with before I can write the math problems for them. So for some, I might ask what age you were when you rode your bicycle, depending on the year, or how many years was it since you first learned to ride a bicycle. And this will just be from here, more addition and subtraction problems and figuring out timelines and how you can go from here. And that's why it's going to be covering measurement and data. Because from here, they're going to be solving word problems involving distances, intervals, or time. Right now, for this activity, it's going to be covering time and intervals of time, because it is a lifetime and their timeline for pennies. And lastly, these are the resources I used. I just included the textbook because I did quote from it throughout the presentation. But thank you so much for your time. I hope you have a great day.